This is episode 5 of the Hybrid Coaching Podcast. In this episode, JK and I try a little shorter podcast format, as well as getting into the topics of minimum effective dose and diminishing returns, how that relates to athletes and to the new hybrid fitness enthusiast. Go ahead, strap in, take a listen, and we'll see you on the other side. Hey JK, how's it going today?
Good, mate. How are you, Anthony? I'm going well.
You excited? You got 2 weeks until World Championships.
Right now, recording, it's pretty much 2 weeks exactly until we're going toe to toe.
For the women's race, it's right now we're recording on May 24th, so it's exactly 2 weeks out, and in about 20 minutes would be the time the women's race runs off. So we're just exactly those 14 days.
Yeah. The last 5 weeks have gone. It's actually gone very quickly. But I think it's just been because I've just been very busy and also training really hard. So it's nice. Got another big day of training tomorrow, and then one more big week and paper week, and we'll be ready to rumble.
That's great. So today we're going to talk about a concept called minimum effective dose. Have you heard of minimum effective dose? And just to start it off, what's your definition of MED?
If I'm being honest, I haven't really dived into this topic, but like a lot before, Anthony. So, me being honest, I'm gonna make sure that you're getting a lot more of the information out than I am. But it's pretty much, to me, it's just self-explanatory what it means, right? Oh, sorry, what it says. It's like, what can you do, or how little can you do to get a desired outcome? Now, I don't even know if that's correct or not, but I'm just going to leave it there and let you kind of define it a little bit more scientifically than that.
Okay. So one of the things we need to define first is what is your goal going to be? Because the minimum effective dose, to me, is the least amount of work you can do to get a desired response, right? But that desired response is, what is it? If your response that you're looking for is maximum muscle growth, so hypertrophy, right? There's a limit to how many reps you can do, how much work can be done basically in an entire day. You take that, right? But there's also a limit to, at a certain point, you're doing damage instead of increasing your muscular recruitment and building those muscle fibers. So for hypertrophy, when you talk about minimum effective dose, it's if you are training to be Mr. Olympia, you really don't want to do minimum effective dose. You want to hit what's actually the maximum effective dose. And we'll get into diminishing returns a little bit later, but minimum effective dose it's the skill, it is the least a trained individual needs to maintain or get a meaningful response. And that's really important there. It's the minimum a trained individual, okay? Because somebody who's a beginner, you hand them a barbell, you make them go run one time, all of a sudden they're getting a big boost, right? And they'll get a big boost as long as they're not doing damage. So a trained individual, usually there's a skill involved. So running has some skill work, especially weightlifting, right? You have to hit your techniques and everything. So when we say a trained individual, you first want to talk about their training age. And everybody has a different training age, and you hear it in weightlifting a little bit more, but when you very first pick up a barbell and decide to do a weightlifting competition. So you're going to do a clean and jerk and a snatch. Okay. If you have to work on a ton of technique, and then once you have your movement patterns down and they're pretty crisp and you're not adjusting them, say maybe 2 years in, then you're actually not working so much on technique. You're working on, and this is just an example, like it takes
Yeah.
people way longer than 2 years to get a really refined snatch and clean and jerk. It takes some people like they just move very well, they can do it less time, but you're always working on those fundamentals. But a say you get to that point where you're a trained individual, now you can apply the load, and the load that you apply and the number of reps you're going to do are there to elicit a response. If your goal is I just want to maintain the strength I'm at, you have to do X number of sets, X number of reps pretty low. If your goal is to I want to get stronger, you have to pass that point. So minimum effective dose is not the same for everyone, and it moves as you become a fitter individual as well, and with what your goals are, right? So that zone of where it's that the bottom of the zone, it changes, and it'll always change,
Yeah.
especially when you're moving over to different modalities. So if I'm running, if I'm rowing, if I'm skiing, I have to get to a point where I'm comfortable enough to do that to be called a trained individual. And then I can apply the minimum effective dose. And it is a concept, like the concept of minimal effective dose, it's most effective. It's best used for people that have very limited time. So they have to work a lot, they have to have kids, other responsibilities that they go into. So they only have, I only got 30 minutes here and I got 30 minutes there and 30 minutes here. So I have to use it the most wisely.
Mm.
I would say that for an actual athlete, somebody training to compete, what is more effective and more reasonable for them is the concepts of maximum effective dose is I we'll get into diminishing returns now. So if I do one rep, I get the full benefit of that rep. We'll just pretend full benefit of that rep. I do another rep, I get like 80% of the benefit of my first rep. Still really good return on it, right? And then 80% of that next rep. And eventually I'm only getting very small incremental pieces like of the benefits by the time I'm at 10 reps of something, we'll say. And it's easiest used as hypertrophy or strength, but this can apply to running 400. Say you have, you know, 15 reps of 400 meters to run. And that first rep you run after a good warm up, that first rep you run is going to be the most beneficial one. Like that
Mm.
one really, you warmed up properly, and that one's the one that you get a great response out of. The next one you do, it might be the same pace and everything, same intensity, but your body responds to it 80% as much. And so the benefits you get from each successive rep go down and they dwindle. Now, our body is a really good machine at staying in homeostasis. It responds really well to things and adapts better than anything else in the world, right? So it it's trying to make sure that it is ready for any load that you can or will put on it. So as you do a big set of 400s or something, it will respond to that. So the next time you go do it, it's ready for that load. Maybe you can add one more. But say that 15, when you go past that, there's a very, very small return. And then like rep 18, there's actually doing damage at that point. And this is just an example, but
Mm.
you never want to get to that point where you're doing damage, right? As an athlete, you want to get every percent better that you possibly can. So, yeah, do that first rep, do that second rep, go all the way. You literally want to find that place. And this is why going off feeling and RPE sometimes is really good. You really want to find that place where you get to where the last benefit is before you
Mm.
do damage. If you can get there every time, you're getting the maximum out of all your workouts.
The
So for
maximum
an
effective
athlete,
dose.
yeah, for an athlete,
Yeah.
that would be your maximum effective dose.
With
Uh,
like, oh, so just like just going back to the topic of like knowing if you're well trained or not. Like what you said a couple of minutes ago is kind of like stuck with me, Anthony, about that is like, how do you know if you're well trained? And let's just like give as an example of running, just for running purposes, right? How do you know? Because then what you're saying is like this is only these type of methods only apply if you're well trained. But how do you know if you are?
So one of the ways you look at it is like a beginner, you could apply any load to them, just whether it's running or weightlifting or anything with a skill, gymnastics, Um, for example, I have a 22-month-old baby, Lily.
Mm,
Every day she does something new, and then the next day she's able to do it again a little further. Like I can watch her develop. It's absolutely astounding.
I
You
bet,
can
yeah.
see this as well. Like when you coach in a gym, you can see it in adults that like haven't worked out in a long time. If they go for a run, they can kind of a week later, you can see them just adapt and do it further and longer, right? They start to like get back into that stride and that skill. So they're running a little better. They find the efficiency of their own body. You help them move their mechanics. So it's their training age, right? So you can see that you don't know like when is a beginner not a beginner? When are they a
Yeah.
novice? When are they a like when do they move up?
Right. Yeah, right, right.
It's kind of subjective that way. Your coach can tell you, but one good measurement of it is if you feel comfortable enough for like weightlifting, you feel comfortable enough to like hit your weights and you're not seeing those, you're not PRing every day anymore when you're
Yeah.
weightlifting. When you reach that point where it's like every day, oh, look, I added 5 more pounds. Oh, look, I added 5 more pounds. Usually maybe 18 months, 2 years of training can get somebody to that point where they're not adding 5 pounds to their lift every day, every week, or
It,
every month,
right.
because
Yeah.
at that point it's like, well, you're just hitting all your beginner gains still. Keep going with that for as long as you can.
Yeah,
Um,
that's right. And I think like for most, I've been there, right, where I've started like something like I haven't bench pressed, barbell bench pressed for so long, and then I start a bench press cycle, and all of a sudden I'm getting gains after gains and lifting heavier and heavier every day, but then it gets to a point where I get not necessarily stuck, but you get to a point where you're not escalating as much as I was at the start. Now, like moving on with like maximum effective dose versus minimum effective dose, and you mentioned this is a great concept if you are a very busy human being, and most people are. And if you can't get to the gym, every day or even every second day, or you've only got half an hour here and half an hour there, right? When it comes to that, but also specifically when it comes to our hybrid sport, right? Like looking at it from a hybrid's perspective, because like you look at it from, let's just say, just pure running. If you're just trying to get better at running, sake of running, and you only have half an hour here, half an hour there, that's very easy, right? Because that's not easy, but at least you just focus on one thing, it's running. How the hell do you start when you start with someone who's trying to compete in hybrid sport?
right. So part of that is we've defined now that minimum effective dose is the least amount of work you can do to elicit a response. Now, if your response is I want to get, or your goal is I want to get stronger. So what's the minimum, and you don't have a lot of time, what's the minimum effective dose that you can do to get stronger, right? Uh, Going into that, well, if you are a strength athlete and you're looking to get into hybrid, how about does minimum effective dose apply to hybrid? Well, minimum effective dose what it does is it says, okay, I'm at the middle range of strength, call it, in the hybrid sport, but I have more than the required strength I need to finish a decafit or a high rocks or any of these sports. So what I need to do is I need to get better at my running or my machine work. And so I'm only going to lift what I need to in order to maintain my strength and maintain that ability to recruit muscle fibers and still be able to do all my aerobic work, all my running, my machine work, my threshold work, everything like that. So I just want to apply the least amount of time to that I can so that I can still apply the most amount of time to get my maximum effective dose out of the things that matter most for the sport. And that could apply to any sport as well, right? Any hybrid sport, at least. Say that the hybrid sport involves a ton of swimming. Well, now you got to go practice swimming technique. You got to go practice your swimming. And like you would have to focus almost all your time there because you're lagging behind in that aspect compared to the other aspects of hybrid fitness. If there was
Yeah.
like a piece of that sport that required something that technical, you know?
Yeah.
So one of the things that people bring up when they talk about minimum effective dose or getting too much is this concept of there was a study done on the German volume training, which if you don't know German volume training, it's 10 by 10 back squats, 10 sets of 10 reps back squat. And you run it for a certain amount of weeks. And they had one group of people, group A, run the German volume training 10 by 10, and one group run 5 by 10. Now, it depends on what your goals are, but basically at the end they said, "Oh, there's no discernible difference between the two because group B that ran 5 by 10, 5 sets of 10 reps instead of 10 by 10, got a 95% response of the group A. So those
Mm.
5 extra sets they did, doubling the amount of time they were working and the amount of work they were doing, didn't give anything." Well, if you're just somebody trying to get into the sport and you have limited time or your goals are not muscle hypertrophy or something, then yeah, 5 by 10 is great. But if you're an athlete, that extra 5%, those guys usually when they do German volume training, you're either usually a power lifter or uh, a bodybuilder. And so they're looking for maximal strength and like maximal muscle growth.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
that 5% difference makes a big deal.
Mm.
So over the duration of time, that's really important. And that also depends on their goals, right? So you need to make sure that you're applying the minimum effective dose to your goals. So if your minimum effective dose was 5 sets of 10 instead of doing 10 sets of 10, that's great if that's what fits in your time. Now, you can also, like I said, you can adjust what that minimum effective dose is based on your goal. And as your body adapts and reaches homeostasis, say I'm doing squats, right? If I just say the first couple days, the first weeks, my minimum effective dose to elicit a growth response in my legs is 135 pounds for 10 reps. And if I do 3 sets of that, I'm golden and I'm good. I don't have to do any more because my legs are growing. They're not growing as much as they could because I'd have to do more work to get there. But within my time frame, they're growing a very small amount that I'm okay with, and I'm getting a little stronger. Well, I can't just run 3 sets of 10 at 135 forever because eventually my legs are going to be at the growth that they need to always do that,
Yeah.
right? So they're not going to grow anymore because I'm not eliciting a response. So either have to up the weight, I have to up the reps, or I have to change my goal of what I'm looking for down to maintenance, right?
Yeah.
So you can adjust yourself or the load and the intensity that you're working at.
So does the terminology of progressive overload come in then? Is that what you're pretty much saying? Is like, and I'm kind of specifically talking about that idea of 3 sets of 10 at 135, right? Like, Is that kind of where you've got to be thinking about your progressive overload, and obviously, as you just said, start where your goal, what your goal is, but then is that where progressive overload comes in?
Right. So like progressive overload is going to be adding a little bit of weight or intensity each time, right? So that you still get that response. We talked about diminishing returns. If I run 3 by 10 at 135 and that was my minimum effective dose to get the response in my legs that I needed, the next time I do it, I'm going to get a lesser response, right? Progressive overload means that I want the same response. So I add, you know, 2.5s or
Um,
fives to it. I get the same exact response that I got that
right.
first time because I
Yes.
changed the stimulus.
Yes. Yeah.
So your body adapts. Like once your body does something, the next time it does it, it has to do less work to get back to that condition that it was in, right? That's the goal of it. It wants to reach a point where it can be ready for that load you're going to apply to your own body, no matter what that load is. It could be a skill, it could be running and everything.
Yeah. And what you said at the start here, Anthony, is that minimum effective dose or even maximum effective dose is always changing because of your body adapting,
Yeah. So,
right?
yeah, you only have like so much capacity to work on technique and work on time and everything. So, when when your body changes to something, if I get now i- if I want my forearms to grow, right? I can do like forearm curls, I can do grip work, farmer carries, whatever I want to do. And the circumference of my forearm will start to grow. It takes a long time, but my body, that growth is my body trying to adapt to that load that I applied to it. Okay. So
Yeah.
my body tries to say, oh, I need to be bigger to get to that, or I need to recruit more muscle fibers, one or the other, both of them happen. Um, to so the next time we encounter this, I'm ready for it. Now
Mm,
you have to apply that every so often, or else your body will be like, oh, we don't do this anymore. So I can decrease in size so that I don't have to do that stimulus anymore because it's
mm,
not coming back around.
mm.
Um, so that's why you just rapidly apply it at certain intervals. And so the minimum effective dose is when you apply it, where you apply it, how much you apply.
Yeah. Right. So, like blending it all, not blending it, putting it all together. Like if you're a Hyrox athlete listening to this right now, or sorry, a hybrid athlete, not just Hyrox, but where you're listening to this, where do you like, and you're intrigued with the whole concept of maximum, minimum effective doses, and you're kind of like inquisitive to know if you're doing doing what you should be doing, let's just say, with you as an individual athlete. Like, where do you start? Or like, how do you know in this sport if you are doing the right dosages at the right time, if that kind of makes sense?
So yeah, you don't really know all the time. If you're just starting, if you have no prior experience, completely untrained, just start. You'll get responses out of just about everything you do. So just start. Go for a run. It doesn't have to be long. Go for an easy run. Lift a couple weights. It's not gonna, don't be scared of, oh my gosh, if I pick up this weight, I'm gonna look like those bodybuilder men. That doesn't
Mm.
happen. Like
Yeah,
there are people out there who have been lifting weights for 10 years trying to look like those people who don't,
yeah.
right? There's a lot you have to do. And if you're like, well, my body type is different. If you want to grow big, you have to eat to grow big.
Mm.
If you want to run fast, like, and be small, you have to eat that way. There's a lot more that goes into it. You can train your body though in those movement patterns, develop technique and develop skill So without changing anything about you as an untrained individual, like your muscle recruitment, anything, if you improve your technique and the skill of running or the skill of how you do something, you'll automatically like be stronger, be faster with no other
Mhm.
changes. Now, if you just go do it consistently, go start out your aerobic work, then you're able to start enduring more of it and you're able to get more volume in on the approach and you're able to run faster, run more, and your body starts to get trained in that, or you're able to lift
Mm.
better, right? So the the funny thing is like, especially in hybrid, if you're a power lifter or a weightlifter and you're coming into hybrid and you're saying, well, I don't want to run, I'll lose all my gains. It's like, not really. Like there's a certain point where you will if you run too much or over it, right? But you can get a little bit of aerobic work in on the bike, on the rower, or running, and that will actually help you in your lifting because if you have this aerobic base now, your breathing's under control, your heart muscle's stronger, all this stuff, you're able to, in your lifting sets, get more volume in the same amount of time because you're able to reduce your rest periods. Your body's able to handle more load because it's got better circulation or your heart muscle's stronger. So they can complement each other, and that's what we look for in hybrid.
Yeah,
Now, like you said, where do you start with it? Well, if you're completely untrained, the answer is just start.
just
If
start. Yeah.
you're a runner or you come from a running sport and you've never done any weightlifting or strength training, again, it's just start, do something, apply a load to your body. If you're a strength training, weightlifting person and you've never ran a step in your life, maybe start on the bike or a treadmill, something a little bit less impactful that's not going to like do some damage right away, or a rower, get that aerobic base built in and then just start something easy, 5 minutes, right? Just go for a 5 minute jog. Um, just as an example on myself, about this time last year, I was about 40 pounds heavier and I'd been working out, I've been strength training and stuff, but I was eating crappy and I just decided, hey, I want to start running again because it'd been a while since I'd run. I'd had back surgery. I wanted to just get back into running. So what did I do? About 5 days a week, I just went for a 2 mile ruck. Like I put 30 to 50 pounds on my back and I just walked for 2 miles
Mm.
with a stroller because I was pushing Lily around. Then what I did is started taking that ruck off. And then of those 5 days, two of them became little runs, like 10, 15-minute runs instead on an assault runner. Just easy.
Mm.
Okay. About 2 weeks later, it turned into 4 days a week I was doing that. And then 2 weeks later, I was going 17 minutes or 18 minutes instead of 15. And then 2 weeks later, I was going about 20, 25. And it was all aerobic. I wasn't doing any speed or anything yet. All I wanted to do was start running again, build up the volume. Eventually, I got to a point where I was running about 30 minutes, 6 days a week. And then it just compounds. It just all of a sudden, like it's the snowball effect. It's creating an avalanche. I just kept going. Now, today, this last week, I ran over 50 miles in the week.
Mm.
Like, and I had two threshold days and some other runs. And it's like now, just a year later, it takes a while, but like it really compounds. I'm 40 pounds lighter and I've ran 50 miles in a week. And so that it's just get started, no matter
Yeah.
what background you're coming from.
Yeah. And it's the power of just getting started, but also what you just said is just the consistency of that is the most important thing. It's not getting
Yep.
started and like having a week on, week off approach. It's the consistency that you're able to maintain over time to allow you to do 50 miles last week,
Yeah.
right?
And it was also that I was applying minimum effective dose. I needed something. I had half an hour, and so what did I do? I went for a walk, because that's what I was, one, able to do, and it was what was going to apply a load to me to get started. It was the least amount I could do and still work towards my goal, right?
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it's just very incremental.
Yeah. That compound effect you just said, sorry, you just stated the compound effect, and just like the rolling avalanche
Yep.
is so like important to understand as well. And I always say to my athletes, Anthony, if I've programmed them like a zone two run, and for them individually, it's a 70-minute zone two run. But you know what? Today was really busy and they can't get 70 minutes in. Well, you know what? Some of them would, or some people would say, oh, well, I can't get 70 minutes in, then no worries. But can you get 20 minutes in? Can you get half an hour in? And at the end of the day, like half an hour is better than nothing. 20 minutes is better than nothing. I know programmed it was 70 minutes, but don't look at it like that. Look at it from the perspective of getting something done instead of nothing as well.
Yep.
Um, yeah.
That's exactly. So just to round it out, coming back to minimum effective dose, it comes from like the drug world or the medical world type of stuff, where what's the least amount of a substance that's say a nurse can give you to alleviate a headache? What's the least amount they can do to get that effect? Well, that amount is what they want. So
Mm.
least application to hit the desired effect. That's your minimum effective dose. If you were to follow that, so which means that if I gave you more of it, it could take it away quicker for less duration, or the intensity would increase. But at a certain point, it would have adverse effects. And that's what we always want to avoid. So it's a big graph, really, of what is effective, what is not, how
Mm.
long can it be effective for, and everything. And so in training, it's you find what's the least. It's really minimum effective dose is really for those people that just don't have time or can't get the volume in because their body isn't to that point yet. So in the trained individual, the minimum effective dose is what the least amount of work you want to do to elicit your desired response. It's not going to be the most effective, but it's something, right? So that's like your example of, well, I prescribed you 70 minutes, but you got 60 minutes till you got to be somewhere, then go somewhere, then go do this for 50 minutes, and then take your 10 minutes to get ready for whatever you got to do.
Yeah.
Because that 50 minutes is better than not doing anything at all, you
Yeah.
know? Um, I would say minimum effective dose in an athlete is not the best way to go. But in hybrid sports, or somebody trying to be an athlete, but in hybrid sports, you can apply the minimum effective dose in an athlete's program for certain aspects of the hybrid fitness realm.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, mate. It's an interesting conversation, and also something that I'll be honest, as I said at the start, something that I've learned through yourself and working with yourself. And guys and girls, if you're listening to this, thank you. And whilst you're here, please like and share as much as possible. I think this is our fifth, is it, Anthony?
Yep.
Our fifth
That'll be the fifth
podcast?
episode.
Fifth episode. And if you ever want to reach out to either one of us, please do. I am on Instagram, jk.hybridcoaching. And Anthony?
I am a Wild Parasini on Instagram, or the Hybrid Engine. Our training platform is the Hybrid Engine, and we'd love to have you there. Or I recommend you go to JK Hybrid Coaching.
And vice versa. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll talk to you in the next one.